The first time I truly scared my stepmother was on Mother's Day, when I handed her a beautifully wrapped gift and watched her smile slowly collapse into pure terror. She thought she was opening a sentimental surprise from the daughter she spent years trying to control. Instead, she was opening the story of every lie she and my father had buried since my mother died. By the time she reached the final page, her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the book. That was the moment she realized I had known everything for years. My name is Ava Whitmore, and when my father married Vanessa Carter, I was 11 years old and still sleeping with my dead mother's sweater wrapped around me every night. My mom, Eleanor, had died 13 months earlier after a brutal battle with melanoma that spread through her body faster than any doctor expected. One minute she was driving me to school and laughing about my crooked science project, and the next she was lying in a hospital bed so weak she could barely hold my hand. I still remember standing beside her grave wearing stiff black shoes that pinched my feet while distant relatives whispered about how strong I looked. I was not strong. I was a terrified little girl trying not to fall apart while adults kept telling me everything would eventually feel normal again. Dad waited exactly 1 year before introducing Vanessa into our lives. Looking back now, I realize that timing was not accidental. Vanessa worked at his investment company in client relations, and she looked exactly like the kind of woman men destroyed families for. Perfect blonde hair, perfect white smile, expensive perfume that lingered in every room long after she left. She wore designer heels even during casual backyard cookouts and somehow made every conversation sound rehearsed. Dad sat me down at the kitchen table the night he introduced her and spoke in that careful voice adults use when they think children are fragile enough to break from the truth. "She makes me happy again, sweetheart," he told me softly. "I know this is hard, but I need you to give her a chance." So I did. I helped Vanessa move into our house while silently watching pieces of my mother disappear. I carried boxes filled with expensive handbags into the closet where my mom used to keep muddy gardening boots. I smiled politely while Vanessa replaced our family photographs with modern abstract paintings because she said the house needed a cleaner aesthetic. She ripped out my mother's vegetable garden and turned it into a stone meditation patio with a fountain in the center because growing your own food looked unsophisticated. I stood there at 12 years old watching strangers destroy the last pieces of my mother while pretending I was grateful for the renovation. For 3 years, I played the role everyone wanted from me. I became the polite stepdaughter with perfect grades and perfect manners. I attended Vanessa's social events wearing dresses she picked out for me, smiling beside people who praised her generosity while barely remembering my name. Her wealthy friends always leaned toward me with fake sympathy in their eyes and said things like, "Vanessa has been such a blessing for you after everything you went through." I learned how to nod politely without saying what I really thought. Dad barely noticed the changes happening inside me. He was too busy rebuilding his life around Vanessa's social world. Their weekends became packed with luxury wine tastings, charity galas, private golf retreats, and networking events with wealthy investors. Meanwhile, I was alone in my room teaching myself how to survive grief quietly enough that nobody found it inconvenient. When I got my first period, I locked myself in the bathroom and searched the internet because Vanessa was at a fundraiser and Dad never answered his phone anymore. When nightmares about my mother dying woke me up shaking in the middle of the night, it was our old golden retriever lying beside my bed that comforted me, not either of them. Vanessa always tried to appear caring in public. She bought me expensive birthday gifts that reflected her taste instead of mine. She constantly referred to me as our daughter at business dinners, even though it sounded more like branding than affection. She started a college savings account in my name and made sure every guest at every party heard about it. People admired her for stepping into the role of motherhood so gracefully. Nobody noticed that she never once sat beside me during my panic attacks or asked what memories I still carried about my real mother. The breaking point came during my sophomore year of high school. I landed the lead role in the school theater production, and for the first time since Mom died, I felt excited about something again. Rehearsals became the one part of my day that belonged completely to me. I loved being on stage because pretending to be someone else felt easier than carrying my own sadness around all the time. Opening night arrived the same evening Vanessa scheduled one of her giant charity events. "You'll have to skip the play," she announced casually while scrolling through her phone during breakfast. "The Harrison family is attending tonight, and their son just got accepted into Columbia." Those kinds of connections matter for your future. Dad started to object for half a second before Vanessa rested her hand lightly on his wrist. That tiny gesture shut him down instantly. It's only a school play, Ava, he said with an uncomfortable shrug. There will be more opportunities. I remember staring at him across the table, feeling something inside me finally crack. Not anger, not sadness, something colder. That night, I went into my closet and pulled out an old wooden jewelry box my mother had left me before she died. I had not touched it in years because opening it felt too painful. Inside were small pieces of my childhood. Her wedding ring, a tiny lock of my baby hair tied with ribbon, birthday cards she had saved, and beneath everything else, a journal I had never been brave enough to read. I sat on my bedroom floor and opened it for the first time. Most of the journal was exactly what you would expect from a dying mother. Memories she wanted me to keep, advice for heartbreak, friendships, and adulthood. Stories about my childhood that I had forgotten. But the final entry changed my life forever. If you are reading this, Ava, then I need you to go to the safe deposit box immediately. The key is hidden inside the back cover. What you find there will explain everything. I am so sorry. My hands shook while I searched the binding until I found a tiny silver key taped beneath the lining. The next morning, instead of going to school, I went downtown to First National Bank. The manager recognized me immediately because my mother's family had banked there for generations. He looked strangely unsurprised when I showed him the key. Your mother said you would come eventually, he told me quietly while leading me toward the private vault. Inside the box was a thick stack of folders, a USB drive, and a sealed envelope with my name written in my mother's handwriting. I opened the letter first. By the second paragraph, I could barely breathe. My mother had discovered my father's affair with Vanessa 6 months before she got sick. She hired a private investigator who documented everything: hotel receipts, secret apartments, text messages, photos of them kissing outside restaurants while my mother thought Dad was working late. The evidence stretched back years. There were screenshots of conversations that made me physically sick to read. Ava is staying with your mother this weekend. Come over. Soon we won't have to hide anymore. Sometimes I wish Eleanor would just disappear already. That final message came from my father. I read every page in silence while my stomach twisted harder with every document. Dad and Vanessa had not only been having an affair, they had been stealing from my mother's family trust for years. Millions of dollars meant for me had been funneled through fake shell companies and offshore accounts. My mother had uncovered detailed financial records proving everything before she died. My grandparents built one of the most respected investment firms in the city over 3 generations. Dad entered the company as a young financial advisor with ambition but no real influence. My mother brought him into the family business, mentored him, and helped him climb into power. The trust was supposed to protect me and preserve my family's legacy. Instead, Dad and Vanessa had been draining it quietly while pretending everything was normal. But the worst part was hidden near the bottom of the file. Medical records, private toxicology reports, hair sample analysis, notes from specialists. My mother's handwriting covered several pages. I started feeling sick after our anniversary dinner. At first I thought it was stress, but the symptoms became stranger over time. I began noticing patterns. I only became violently ill after meals Thomas prepared for me personally. There were test results showing elevated levels of heavy metals in her system. Notes from doctors who privately questioned the speed and irregularity of her decline. Reports she secretly commissioned after becoming suspicious. She never directly accused Dad of poisoning her, but she believed something was terribly wrong. I can't prove it, she wrote. Maybe I am wrong, but if anything happens to me, you deserve to know the truth. I sat alone in that private bank room for almost 4 hours. By the time I walked out, I no longer felt like a child. I never confronted them immediately. That would have been emotional, reckless. Instead, I became perfect. For the next 2 years, I played the role of the flawless daughter better than anyone could have imagined. I attended every social event. I smiled through every family photo. I joined the clubs Vanessa recommended and maintained top grades in every class. I acted so normal that neither of them suspected I was building a case against them piece by piece. At night, my bedroom transformed into something else entirely. I studied accounting, finance, corporate law, and fraud investigations online while everyone slept. I copied documents from Dad's office whenever he carelessly brought work home. I tracked suspicious transactions through company records. I built spreadsheets matching shell corporations to hidden accounts. I recorded dinner conversations when they discussed business around me like I was too young to understand anything. 6 months after finding Mom's letter, I contacted the people she trusted most. The envelope inside the safe deposit box contained 3 names: a forensic accountant, a corporate attorney, and Judge Richard Holloway, a retired federal judge who had been one of my grandfather's closest friends. I met them secretly at the judge's home one Saturday afternoon while Dad believed I was attending debate practice. The moment they saw the evidence, the entire room changed. The accountant leaned back in his chair and muttered a curse under his breath. The attorney looked furious. Judge Holloway simply stared at me with heartbreaking sadness. "Your mother was one of the finest women I have ever known," he said quietly. "What exactly do you want to do, Ava?" I had already spent months thinking about that answer. "I want to learn everything," I told them. "I want to understand the business completely before I take it back." The judge nodded slowly like he had expected that response all along. "Your mother said you would choose patience over revenge." From that point forward, I lived a double life. 3 nights every week, I secretly trained with my mother's old allies. The accountant taught me how to uncover fraud inside complex financial systems. The attorney walked me through corporate law, trusts, acquisitions, and criminal liability. Judge Holloway introduced me to powerful people in banking and regulation who had once respected my mother deeply and quietly despised what my father had become. Meanwhile, at home, Vanessa bragged constantly about my achievements to wealthy strangers over champagne. I graduated high school early at 16. Dad and Vanessa threw me a polished little celebration party filled with business associates pretending to care about my future. "We are so proud of you," Dad told me while photographers snapped pictures beside the cake. Vanessa smiled brightly beside him. "Yale at 16. The board already sees incredible potential in you." I smiled right back, knowing I would soon own the company they thought belonged to them. That summer, Vanessa announced she wanted to adopt me officially. "You are my daughter in every way that matters," she said dramatically during lunch at one of her favorite restaurants. "Let's make it legal before college." I studied her carefully while she spoke. There was calculation behind her smile. Adoption would strengthen her future claim to the company if anything ever happened to Dad. I hugged her warmly and told her I would love that. That same night, I met secretly with my mother's team again. The attorney actually smiled after hearing the adoption plan. "This helps us," she explained. "The legal process requires updated financial disclosures. We will gain access to records they normally keep hidden." The accountant updated us on the money trail. They had already identified most of the missing funds across multiple offshore accounts. It was enough evidence for criminal prosecution. Then Judge Holloway asked the hardest question. "And the evidence regarding your mother's illness?" Silence filled the room. "We still cannot conclusively prove murder," the attorney admitted carefully. "But there is enough suspicion to reopen investigations if necessary." I looked down at my mother's journal resting on the table beside me. "One battle at a time," I whispered. Before I left that night, Judge Holloway handed me a small velvet box. "Your mother wanted you to have this when you were ready." Inside was my grandfather's old fountain pen. The same pen he used to sign the company's first major expansion contract decades earlier. I carried that pen everywhere after that. 2 weeks later, Mother's Day arrived. Vanessa loved turning Mother's Day into a performance. Huge catered brunches, professional photographers, carefully staged social media posts celebrating her devotion to family. This year, she planned an elaborate garden party where she intended to announce the adoption publicly, while caterers transformed the backyard into a luxury event space. I prepared the gift. I spent days assembling it. Every document, every photograph, every bank statement, every affair receipt, every toxicology report, every hidden account. I organized it all into a custom leather-bound book titled A Daughter's Gratitude. The morning of the party, I found Vanessa upstairs deciding between 2 expensive dresses while assistants rushed around her. "I have something special for you," I told her while handing over the wrapped package. Her eyebrows lifted in surprise because I had never once given her a Mother's Day gift before. "Well, this is unexpected," she laughed lightly. "I want you to open it now," I said. Something in my voice made her pause. She slowly removed the silver ribbon and opened the book. At first she smiled, then she turned the first page and froze. The opening photograph showed my mother smiling in her garden years earlier before she got sick. Vanessa's expression tightened instantly. "What exactly is this?" she asked carefully. "Keep going," I answered softly. Page after page revealed the truth she thought stayed buried forever. The affair timeline, hotel receipts, screenshots of text messages, financial fraud, forgery, stolen trust assets, medical records, lab reports. By the time she reached the toxicology section, sweat was running down her temple hard enough to ruin her makeup. "This is insane," she whispered shakily, but she kept reading. The final section outlined the legal actions already prepared against both her and my father, including meetings scheduled with federal investigators and regulatory agencies. Those offshore accounts were never as invisible as you thought, I explained calmly while sitting across from her vanity mirror. Electronic transfers leave traces, phones leave location data. Bank timing records overlap beautifully when you know what to look for. Her face lost every ounce of color. What do you want from me? She whispered. Downstairs, the first guests began arriving. I stood slowly and adjusted the sleeves of my dress. You are going to host your party? I told her. You are going to smile for your guests and pretend everything is normal. Tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, you and my father will meet me at Judge Holloway's office. If you cooperate, maybe you avoid prison. Her eyes filled with panic. This is blackmail. No, I said quietly, this is consequences. The party lasted nearly 4 miserable hours. Vanessa somehow maintained composure in front of guests, though her hands shook every time she lifted a champagne glass. I stayed beside her the entire afternoon, smiling like the perfect daughter while slipping tiny reminders into every conversation. Vanessa has taught me so much about loyalty, I told one guest while holding eye contact with her. She nearly dropped her wine glass. Dad arrived late from a golf outing, completely unaware of the disaster waiting upstairs in his office. I had already placed his copy of the book neatly on his desk. After the final guest finally left, Vanessa disappeared upstairs. I followed her 20 minutes later and found her frantically throwing jewelry into a suitcase. Leaving already? I asked from the doorway. She spun toward me, breathing hard. You can't prove all of this. The FBI will probably disagree, I replied smoothly. So will the Securities Commission. That part was partially a bluff. The authorities were not involved yet, but Vanessa did not know that. She collapsed onto the edge of the bed, looking suddenly older. What happens now? Now we wait for Dad. When he finally arrived home, I met him in the foyer holding his gift. Where is Vanessa? He asked distractedly. Upstairs, read this first. Watching him go through the documents felt entirely different from watching Vanessa. She reacted emotionally. Dad reacted like a lawyer preparing for war. He turned every page slowly, carefully controlling his expression, but when he reached the medical evidence regarding my mother, his face visibly broke. Where did you get this? He asked hoarsely. Mom left it for me. Silence stretched between us. You honestly think I killed her? I think you betrayed her, stole from her, lied to her, and wished she would disappear, I answered coldly. Whether you cross the final line is something investigators can decide. For the first time in years, my father looked genuinely afraid of me. What do you want? Tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock, Judge Holloway's office. That night, I found Vanessa sitting outside alone on the stone patio she built over my mother's garden. Why wait so long? She asked quietly without looking at me. Because I needed to become strong enough first. I finally explained my terms. Dad would surrender control of the company back through the original trust structure. The stolen money would be returned. Both of them would resign publicly while remaining under legal supervision as consultants. In exchange, I would delay criminal proceedings. She laughed bitterly. You are 16 years old. I am 16 years old with evidence capable of destroying both your lives. Dad eventually joined us outside, looking exhausted and hollow. You could have come directly to me, he said. Like Mom did before she died, I asked. He had no response. Then I delivered my final blow. I also know about your affair with Michael Bennett from legal, Vanessa. Her head snapped toward me in horror. Dad stared at her in complete confusion before rage slowly spread across his face. You told me that ended months ago. It did, she insisted weakly. Hotel records say otherwise, I interrupted. The two of them immediately turned on each other exactly the way I knew they would. I walked back inside while their furious whispers exploded behind me in the dark. That night I barely slept. At 3 in the morning, I heard a car leave the driveway. By sunrise, Vanessa was gone. Dad sat alone in the kitchen wearing the same clothes from the day before, staring blankly into a coffee mug. She left, he muttered before I even asked. I nodded once. Then let's finish this. The meeting at Judge Holloway's office lasted nearly 4 hours. Dad signed everything. Transfer agreements, resignation paperwork, asset recovery authorizations, voting rights, legal restrictions. When the judge finally slid the final document across the table, Dad looked stunned. No direct contact with Ava outside approved channels until she turns 18. His eyes snapped toward me. You cannot seriously want that. Sign it, I replied softly, or I release every medical report publicly. His hand trembled while signing my grandfather's pen across the paper. When everything was finally done, he looked at me with exhausted defeat. Your mother would be proud of you, he said quietly. I know, I answered. 2 months later, I sat in my father's old office at the head of the conference table as the youngest acting CEO in company history. Publicly, the transition was framed as family succession planning meant to honor my mother's legacy. Privately, Everyone important understood exactly what really happened. Dad kept his freedom but lost control over everything else. Vanessa was eventually located in Miami attempting to access one of the offshore accounts we already flagged. She spent 2 nights in federal custody before agreeing to cooperate fully in recovering the stolen funds. The investigation into my mother's illness quietly continued, though we never found definitive proof of murder. Some experts believed the toxicology patterns were suspicious. Others insisted the cancer alone explained everything. Dad denied harming her until the very end. Part of me still does not know what to believe. Maybe he truly poisoned her. Maybe he only wished she would die and fate did the rest. I am not sure which possibility is worse. The company recovered slowly under new leadership. We untangled years of fraudulent transactions, rebuilt damaged relationships, and restored most of the missing trust funds. I postponed college and spent my days learning how to lead the empire my mother was supposed to pass down herself one day. I sold the old family house 6 months later. There were too many ghosts inside those walls. Dad moved into a smaller home far outside the city after most of his social circle quietly abandoned him. Last week, I visited my mother's grave for the first time since everything happened. I brought wildflowers because she always hated expensive bouquets. "The company is safe now, Mom," I whispered while kneeling beside the stone. "Your legacy survived." As I stood to leave, I noticed someone watching from farther down the cemetery path. Vanessa. She held a tiny bouquet in trembling hands but did not come closer. For a moment, we simply stared at each other across the distance. Then she gave one small nod before turning away silently. Every Mother's Day since then, I sent her the exact same thing. A photograph of my mother smiling in her garden, and one sentence underneath, "Thinking of you today." She never replies, but I know she understands perfectly.